Welcome to the Writing with Purpose podcast, where I, Anna Woolliscroft, chat with fellow writers and outdoor enthusiasts about how we can embrace creativity and curiosity to live a life full of adventure that doesn't feel like hard work. I delve into exploratory conversations about my two loves in life, writing and nature connection, as part of my mission to share the well-being benefits they both bring. It's wonderful to have you here today. In this episode of the Writing with Purpose podcast, I chat with published author Mandy Byatt about her writing journey. We discuss writing influences, types of writing, form and style, developing characters and plots, and how to stay on track with your writing goals. Hi, Mandy Byatt. It's fantastic to have you join me on the Writing with Purpose podcast. I'm very excited to talk to you because you are a published author in the psychological thriller genre. Would that be the best?
I am, yes, I am.
Describe it. And I've got one of the books here. I couldn't find the one that I've already read. So this one is your latest book, The Younger Woman. And I've read Just Another Liar, which I read over Christmas, which was just, I was kind of stuck on the sofa for several hours. Because it was really good. Yeah, it was really good.
Thank you.
I tend to read a lot of sort of sci-fi or maybe not sci-fi, maybe more supernatural and crime. So it was slightly different for me as a read, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great. I've not started the second one yet, but I shall do. It's
Thank you.
Very
Thanks,
exciting. Anna. So yes, welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. It's great to talk to you and to see you again.
Yeah, well, we first met, didn't we, last year at the Creative Connecting in Cheshire, I think it is. A sort of networking organisation run by a lady called Sue France, and you were one of the guest speakers. And I admit I hadn't heard of you at the time, and I'd booked this literary lunch because I'd had a lot of people had recommended it to me because I'm a budding author. I'm on that sort of journey, and I'm following in your footsteps, probably several years behind you. And yeah, I went to sit down at a table at this networking event, and then I saw you sitting on your own at another table, and I thought, why am I sitting on my own at a table? I'll go and sit with this lady who's also on her own. So I had no idea that you were the prime speaker at the end.
Not sure about the prime speaker.
You're doing yourself an injustice there. Your talk was brilliant. And then, we got chatting, didn't we? And there's a lot of similar interests outside of writing as well. And what I'm absolutely fascinated. I've got lots of questions for you, but I think if we could start off by sort of, what was your childhood relationship with writing and reading, and where did that goal, if you like, come from of I want to be a published author? Do you want to share a little bit about that journey for us?
Yeah, so I was always a big reader when I was small. So starting out, with comics, Mandy, Bunty, progressing into magazines, Jackie, and I've forgotten what the other ones were called, but yeah, I was always a big reader. And then, Enid Blyton, Nancy Drew, all that sort of thing. I spent a lot of time in school holidays. My nan and granddad had a pub near to Macclesfield, so spent a lot of time there, not actually in the pub drinking, but there was a field behind the pub. So I was on my own a lot. So I was thinking about this the other day. I used to spend a lot of time just making up stories in my head, not necessarily writing them down, but imaginary things, mostly around horses, because I always wanted a horse, but obviously never had one. I was always a big reader. When I went to university, I did marketing and German, and that sort of cooled off a little because you haven't got time, have you? So But then I think I did start writing a little bit, but I wasn't one of these people who, wrote a novel when I was 8 and stuck it in a drawer. I wasn't that sort of person. But
Yeah.
as I moved through late teens into early 20s, I started to write a couple of short stories. And then I was in my probably mid to late 20s when I first wrote my first novel, which was a romantic comedy.
Ah, that's
um, which
interesting.
was, yeah, well, that's the sort of thing I was reading at the time. So yeah, I thought, yeah, write one of those. So I did. I self-published it. It got nowhere with it. Did the most horrendous cover ever. Um, and then yeah, wrote a screenplay as well. I got really interested in that and film and television. I've always been a big TV watcher as well, dramas on
Mm,
TV. Not so much now, but when I was younger. So yeah, the writing came from a love of reading, and I think
mm,
you've got to have that. I've heard stories of people who've gone on creative writing courses or other courses who, they don't read, they just think they're going to bash out a long novel, and get a bestseller. But I think you've got to have that love of reading. Um, and I was thinking again about that this morning. I feel happy when I'm reading a good novel. I'm
yeah.
not so happy when I'm not reading a good novel. I feel content. It's that contentment, isn't it, that getting
Mm.
stuck into a good novel brings.
Yeah, because I think you're taken elsewhere when you get stuck into a good story, and you sort of forget everything that's normal around you, the aches and sorry, not the aches, the stresses and the anxieties and that of daily life. Just they're not there when you're
Yeah.
in a good book. And I know exactly what you mean when you say that. It's almost so when I started reading your book, it was the first fiction book that I'd read for quite some time. I listened to things on Audible, which is normally personal development or podcasts, but they're always what I would term as professional or business rather than yes, I get enjoyment out of them, but rather than just pure for pleasure.
Mhm.
So I was very aware of the fact that I'll be doing something and then right, I've got to get back to Mandy's book. And it was that I was being drawn back to the book. So any sort of spare time that I had, I wanted to read. And I'd miss that. I'd really miss that because I used to read a lot as a child.
Mhm.
Enid Blyton, the same. Not so much on the magazines. I was trying to think as you were listing those magazines there. Was there one called Just 17?
There was, wasn't there? Yes, and
Yeah,
blue jeans as well. I mean,
yeah.
I'm older than you, so yeah.
Not that
But
much.
yeah.
It's only a couple of years, I think. But yeah, so yeah, I used to read more of the novel rather than the
Mm,
magazines. I probably read more magazines now because I read Psychology's magazine. I've got a couple of
mm,
writing magazines that I receive that I get in the post on a subscription. But I was always the novel writer.
mm,
So it's interesting to hear you talk about the stories in your head that had got the horses in there, which is probably similar to the environment that you grew up in, very rural. So I grew up in the Staffordshire Moorlands as well. So we
mhm,
sort of had similar childhood experiences probably. And then you wrote the romantic comedy. And then
mhm.
so would you say that your interest in reading and writing has changed as you've grown up and perhaps you were doing different things with work and social life and the
Mm.
environment that you lived in as well. Has that influenced you?
Um, yeah, I've always found writing sort of an area to take me away from the stresses of life. So jobs, relationships, that sort of thing. Um, I'm pretty good at, I'm not usually one of these people who has to sit and wait for the muse to come. I can just dive straight into it. So, say for example, if I had a bad day at work, I could just go into a room, never had a proper office, go and sit at the dining room table, put some earphones in and just start writing. So yeah, it has affected, you know, the situation in life or the job I've been in, or yeah, even where I've lived, because I've lived abroad when I was a student. Didn't do so much writing there. But,
Enjoying the student years.
yeah. But I do remember I did go over to Germany when I was 18 for a summer job. And I remember that was probably, when I first started writing short stories. So I think just I was obviously on my own to an extent, so losing yourself in the writing is something I've always done and I've always enjoyed. And it's been, yeah, sort of therapy, really.
Yeah.
You can get out, can't you, what's going on inside your head, even if, you're not using people's names who you know or your own name. It all comes out in some way.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I'm learning at the moment as well with this master's course that I'm on, the particular module that we're doing now is writing in the self. So it delves a lot into autobiography and our relationship, if you like, as a writer with the narrator of the story and the characters of the story. And inevitably, there's an element of us in those characters, isn't there? And I think that's, for me anyway, I'm sort of seeing that as some of the things that I've been through. That there is several characters in there, because you can draw on your own experience, the feelings that you had, and it makes it more enriching almost than trying to think, oh, well, that's what that person would think in that situation or behave in that situation. So yeah, I think you yourself are a great source of inspiration to your own writing, aren't you? And
Definitely.
yeah, I totally
Yeah.
get when you say, writing as a form of therapy, which is what I love from the journaling perspective as well, is just to have that blank piece of paper, pour your thoughts out in whatever way, shape, or form they come out. And you can use that as reflection. You can use that to organize things, plan for the future, but also just as a source of creativity and to let your imagination flow and see where that leads. So
Yes.
yeah, it makes me very happy that you said that.
Yeah.
Writing as therapy.
Yeah, I think it is. And even it's it might not be a conscious level, it's a subconscious thing as well. Lots of my novels, because I write historical fiction as well that haven't been published yet, or there's often a child or someone struggling to have a child. And that's something that, I haven't got children, but has, come up in my life. And it's not something that I've thought about consciously when I've been writing, oh, okay, I'm going to write about this woman going through IVF or whatever. But
Yeah.
it tends to come out. And so, yeah, I found that
Yeah. It's a
interesting.
good basis to start. Isn't that the younger woman? Is it that? That's a similar
Um,
story, isn't it? With the IVF
yeah,
and a couple
about
trying
it
for a
is.
baby. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
in Just Another Liar as well, there was a woman who couldn't have a baby. So
Mm.
yeah, and I it's part of my, I'm obviously an author, but it's hard to make a living at that. So I don't help, I work freelance for a company that does training courses for writers.
Mm.
And so I look at a lot of students' work, and I can see, I don't know, they live in Outer Mongolia in 92, and their character lives in Outer Mongolia in 92. So I see a lot of that in people's first novels where you do
Mm.
use your own experiences. So I think it's a good thing to do,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I think it
Um,
helps you to get comfortable with some of your own,
yeah,
writing almost. I'm starting to realize now is a bit of a journey, a bit of a self-discovery journey almost for you as an individual. Most of the pieces that I've produced so far for this master's definitely draw on my experiences. Whether it be a bit of an abstract poem as such that addresses limiting beliefs. And I've just written just written about my first crush at school. And we used to, because for myself and my best friend at the time, we both liked this boy, and it was more of that, so kind of coming into age, and what are all these feelings? And we'd got this name for this guy, maybe I should change the name. I don't know, but I think maybe only a couple of us knew how we referred to him. And I started the little story with what we used to call him. I'm going to tell you anyway. Cream cake. Um, but yeah, I can't remember where I was leading with that. But yeah, sorry, you kind of you grow yourself, I think, through the writing
Yeah,
journey. And is that something that you found and that you can share when you're reading other students' work, sort of you can see that development in them and in their writing and themselves?
not so much with the students, but because I don't tutor, I moderate on the courses. I can see the progression in the craft of their writing. How that affects them, I don't know, because it's all online study as well. Um, but yeah, it's hard to sort of analyze yourself, isn't it? But I do think if you looked at, I've written 7 or 8 novels now. If you looked at those and looked at the themes, there would probably be a mirroring or a progression of things that have happened to me or have happened to friends as well. That, you know, with close friends, you obviously pick up on things that they're going through and they're affecting them. And also, there's that side of it, but I don't think you have to experience things directly to understand how it will affect people. So that's part of a writer's job, to imagine how that would affect the person.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know whether that answers your question. It's hard to
Yeah.
self-analyze yourself, isn't
It,
it?
it is, yeah, it is. But I think everything that we realize and we write about it just helps to develop the craft a bit more, helps us to get closer
Definitely.
maybe to the characters. I mean, is there any sort of, do you have a bit of a process or are there tips that you can share with, anyone who's listening and also me as a budding writer of how you can develop that character or develop that plot or, really get into the head of, okay, well, what would that character think in this situation? And what sort of techniques would you suggest?
I think you've got to, it's difficult, isn't it? Because character influences plot, plot influences character. But you've got to think how that character would react and what sensibly they would do next, not just have them, which I've done in the past, oh, they'll now fly to Venice because that fits the plot. They wouldn't do that. One thing, because I write crime as well, which is really complicated in terms of plot, is I often question the characters. So I might have a list of 10 suspects in a novel, and I'll say, well, why did you murder? It's always a murder, isn't it? Why did you murder this person? And they'll give you the reason why. And then I'll say, but why wouldn't you murder this person? And they'll give me the reason why. And I write that in first person as if I'm talking to them and they're answering.
Yeah.
I wouldn't kill them because I love them and da, 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 da. And that really helps me in terms of plot, figure out who they are as a character and where they might go next and what will work and, who the murderer will be.
Yeah.
Lots of people write lists, don't they, of, physical attributes, things from the childhood. I think a good one is to work out what that character's secret is. What wouldn't they want anyone else to know? And also what their flaw is as a character. Are they arrogant? Are they ambitious? Are they unkind? And how they're going to change over the course of a novel. Your character's got to change or else it will hold no interest for the reader.
Yeah.
And where, as a writer, you've got to think, what emotions are you eliciting in the reader at every stage? So when I'm planning, I use a spreadsheet, chapters down one side, characters at the top, and then I also have columns for what is the reader thinking is happening and what is the reader feeling. Are they feeling sad for the character? Are they feeling scared? So yeah, those are a few tips. I read lots of books on writing as well.
Yeah.
You know, I've got loads and loads of books to keep
Yeah. I suppose
recycling them.
part of it's what works for you, isn't it? But some of these proven
It is.
techniques are a great place to develop what works for you. I
Mhm.
like the idea of asking the questions and you know, the secret of what is it that they don't want to share, they don't want to be revealed. And I suppose when you're doing that kind of questioning with the characters, there'll be some sort of crossover that can be woven into the story, maybe at some point.
Definitely.
Yeah.
When I did a master's as well in creative writing, with a focus on crime fiction. And that was one of the questions they asked us, what secrets does your character have? And I came up with, my main character is a kleptomaniac,
Mm,
which then it fitted it. Once I thought of it, I thought, oh yeah, that fits her character perfectly. And also, you know, it was great for the plot because something that she'd stolen could come out in the plot later.
mm,
So yeah, it's a good question to ask that one.
yeah.
And also what flaw they've
Yeah.
got.
And keep going deeper with that.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
You know, how did the secret come about? How do they feel about that? What is the flaw? Where did the flaw originate from, potentially?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, you've written quite a lot of different genres of books. What's your favorite?
Um, oh. Well, I'm going to say I've just started writing a crime series,
Mm.
which I've never done a series before. It's based in historic properties around the country. So it's got a curator and a detective who's a on-off
Ah,
lover. So I really, really enjoy writing that. And I've started with, well, I've set it at Biddulph Grange, which is a National Trust
National
property.
Trust.
It's my hometown. So I've really, really enjoyed writing that
Yeah.
because, you know, as a teenager, before the National Trust owned it, they used to, you know, as all the teenagers did, go into the Grange, look round. It used to be a hospital then, you know, when we were kids in
Did
the
it? I did
woods.
not know that. Okay.
Yes,
Mm.
yeah, it did. And I love history. So one of the novels I've written is also based on Biddleford Hall and somebody who used to be a vicar, who was born in Road Hall because I lived in Road Heath as well.
Mm.
So yeah, I love history and taking inspiration from what's happened in the past and perhaps twisting it into a crime novel. I do like crime, you know, I think
Yeah.
we're all interested in why someone does something, aren't we?
Yeah, that human
Let's,
behavior, they're being drawn
yeah,
into, you know, where does that instinct come from?
yeah. So I like
Yeah,
the psychological aspect of it.
yeah. And it's a beautiful setting. So for those people that aren't aware of
Yeah.
Biddulph and Biddulph Grange, there's a country park, but there's also the old house as well, which has got beautiful grounds, and there's lots of little almost other worlds within it, isn't there? They've got a Japanese or a Chinese garden area.
Yeah.
They've got a few different buildings that you can walk through, and you know, part of it's like you're walking through is it Yellowstone National Park in America, because they've got the big
Yes.
the
Redwood tree.
redwoods, that's it. Yeah, so
Yeah.
what a fabulous setting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
my victim, yeah, dies in the Egyptian tunnel. So
Oh,
yeah.
right. It's nice, I think, when you read something like that, though, particularly if you're local or you're aware of some of the places. Because in Just Another Liar, you touched, I think you mentioned Ashbourne, and some of the other local areas that I'm aware
Mm.
of. So it's a kind of almost, it's makes you more connected, I think, to the characters and
Yeah.
the story. I mean, one of the characters in that book was called Anna anyway, wasn't it? I was constantly comparing
Yeah.
myself with Anna. I was like, have I done that? Do I do that one?
I did write it before I met you,
You did.
so
You did. No, thank you. No, it wasn't based on me. I can assure you that. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, because you've written quite a lot of different books. You said that you'd written 8 novels, was it?
Mhm.
And you've won quite a lot of awards as well, for some of these, haven't you? You were sorry, longlisted for Orange
Yes,
Path, was it for screenwriting, and then winner of Radio
yes,
5 competition. So
yeah,
I think if there's a lot of when you're writing or you're a budding writer, I certainly see a lot of competitions out there for submitting short stories or synopsis of stories and poetry and that sort of thing. So is that something that you actively sought out and went through when you before being published? And is it something that you
yes,
would recommend?
definitely. It was something I came to quite late on. But I think, just entering a competition gives you that focus, doesn't it? As a writer, it's easy, isn't it, to just while away the hours when you're supposed to be writing, staring out of the window or looking at the internet or, whatever you're doing, looking at social media. So having that focus of a competition with a deadline and a certain amount of words you've got to write, sometimes you've got to write the whole novel, really, yeah, helped me to get things finished. And it gives you a little, what do we all need? We all need a bit of hope, don't we? It's that hope. Oh,
Yeah.
the announcements coming up. Am I going to be on the list? And don't get me wrong, there were plenty of times when I wasn't on the list. I remember going to Crime Fest in Bristol for the debut Dagger, I think, was announced there, and looking at the list on the wall, and I was like, oh, hey, where's my name? Where's my name? But of course, thousands of people enter. So, but yeah, and there are often online communities where you can chat with other people.
Mm.
So about competitions, so that's good. But once I did start getting placed, then things started turning around for me because I think it gave me some confidence that, I can do this and
Yeah.
hopefully I will get published. So yeah, I definitely recommend entering competitions.
Yeah.
There are a lot out there.
Yeah, there are, and depending on whether you want to write something that's flash fiction, short story, poetry, there's a lot of different options, isn't there? And across different genres
Yeah,
as well. I mean, I'm a member of I pay for an annual subscription for the London Writers Salon, and I really enjoy some of their podcast interviews with authors, and they do quite a lot of workshops. I don't always attend them. I've sort of this year I've sort of said I'm going to concentrate on my studies, and then I'll start to look at releasing things and applying for competitions and that. And I'm also I pay for I don't know if it's a bronze level, but it's a lower level for the Writers HQ and also Jericho Writers, which I think you did something for last year. Am I right in
I
thinking? Did
do.
you do a fiction?
Yeah, I tutor their fiction foundations course. So it's a
Ah,
joint course between Jericho Writers and the Professional Writing Academy, PWA. So
mm,
yeah, I tutor their fiction foundations course, which is
ah,
great. And um, there's only been a couple of courses so far, but I mean, people have loved it, not because I'm the tutor, because it's a great course.
mm.
Um, and I can definitely see an improvement in the writing and in people's enthusiasm to want to write as the course goes on.
Mm, yeah, yeah, because I think when you start to see, oh, that technique sinking in, or I've had some good feedback, and like you've just said, oh, I can do this,
Mhm.
because we talk about writer's blocks and things like that, and that's something that really has prevented me from writing for years. I've sort of taken a career in marketing similar to you, marketing communications, and then became a
Mhm.
copywriter, but it's a totally different style of writing. And I've always, if I can probably say this, hidden behind other people's words
Mhm.
instead of releasing my own. And it's only
Mhm.
really through confidence of meeting other people, talking to other people, and then this course, that I think actually I can do this. And
Mm.
that's trying to get over those limiting beliefs. So it's great to have somebody say, oh, you're improving, and you can see where you've come. And I suppose it gives you great satisfaction for you to be able to say that to
Yeah,
others as well and
yeah,
be a part of their
it's
journey.
great.
Mm.
Yeah, and you pick up so much from reading other writers' work, and it's hard to look at your own work and think, oh, this doesn't work or this does work, but looking at other writers' work really helps me anyway. And I know a lot of other writers, a lot of courses are based, including MAs, on that peer feedback. So yeah, that really helps. I mean, it's not, you know, it's a writing is all about, well, for me, it's all about losing myself in the writing. I wanted to be published. That was a goal that kept me writing. You know, one day, and I used to say to my partner, we used to go past, I don't know if you know, Peck's in Congleton. It's
Yeah,
quite,
the
yeah. So we
restaurant.
used to,
The
yeah, we
dinner at
used to,
8.
yeah. We used to drive past there because I used to live near there, and we used to say, I used to say, oh yeah, when I get a publishing deal, I'll go to that restaurant. And
Did
you know,
you?
it did. Yeah, we did. Yes, we did. But you know, there are, once you get published. In fact, I was listening to a podcast. I don't listen to many, but I started listening to the Diary of a CEO. I was listening to one with Stephen Bartlett and Jordan Peterson, and he was talking about, you know, once you reach that goal, what's the next goal? You know, what you're gonna do. You can't just stop and go, all right, I've done that, I'm gonna relax now. So you're always reaching for the next goal. And it's a hard profession to be in. I'm out of contract at the moment. So, you know, I got an agent. He got me a 2-book deal with Avon HarperCollins. The books were published. They they did okay, but you know, there are thousands and millions of books out there. Now I'm out of contract, so but I'm carrying on writing, and hopefully the series will be published. But it is a hard thing, and it's, you know, it's not that, you know, I was absolutely thrilled when I got the agent and then when I got the contract, but you know, I still have days, a lot of days where I think, can I do this? You know, no one's buying the books. You know, publishing companies, you know, get rejected by those. So it is a long, hard process, but you've got to keep going. You've got to have that mentality to keep on, and you've got to love the writing, because who knows if you get published or not.
Yeah, so you got to enjoy the process and your time
Yeah,
being present with the
yeah,
formation of that book. And
yeah,
just have faith in yourself, really, that this is what I want to achieve, and keep going.
yeah,
And I think because you write with so many different genres, you're constantly keeping yourself interested in it, in a
yeah.
way. But yeah, it's I mean, I was looking at some stats the other day for I can't remember where it was now, some British Publishing Association, and books are on the increase still, be it more digital format than the print format, but people are still demanding stories. And I think once you read a story, it's a number of years before you can go back to that story, really. Certainly with fiction, isn't it? If it's a business book or personal development book, you can refer back to it because there's constantly going to be something else that that you can learn from it. So, I mean, what are your kind of aspirations? You've written a screenplay before, and you got into film. Your interest was there. Maybe, you know, one of your books at the moment can be turned into a film, or your new series could be turned into, you know, the next Taggart or something like that. That's showing my age, isn't it? Taggart, where did that come
Yeah.
from?
Definitely. I mean, I would like to, yeah, I nearly actually did an MA in screenwriting. I was offered an interview at, I think it was Salford Uni. This was years ago. For some reason, I didn't go. But I am interested in screenwriting. I'm now a moderator as well for John Yorke's story courses. So I don't know if anyone has read John Yorke's book Into the Woods, which is a fantastic book about storytelling. So yes, I would love to get into that area, but I'm at the moment focused on writing this series and perhaps another spin-off series. But yeah, we were talking beforehand, weren't we? I love doing courses. So I did a screenwriting course last year with John York Story, and I'll probably do another one this year.
Yeah.
I love, but it's completely different form writing a screenplay than writing a
Yeah.
novel. But I think it's
Stay
good to keep
open.
pushing yourself. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah, trying new
Yeah.
things. And with
Yeah.
writing, learning one technique, one genre can still feed into another one, can't it? Because they're all creative works, and it's great to get your imagination
Yeah.
flowing. Yeah, I was I was going to ask you, there was a question on the tip of my tongue then, and then you said something else and I completely forgot. Is it going to come back to me? No,
Probably
it's
come back
not.
to you tonight when you're lying in
Yeah,
bed.
exactly. Yeah, or as soon
Yeah.
as we've clicked the end button, it'll come back to me. Yeah, but it's interesting how I think probably your own interests change, and therefore you write something different. Would you say that there's any kind of process, steps that people can take to get into that writing mode, that creativity mode, if you like? Or what works for you?
Well, I'm a big believer in putting your bottom on the chair and doing it. um, I think some people, perhaps when you were beginning, you're starting out, think, oh yeah, I'll write when the muse comes along, and
Mm,
when I get an idea. But I don't think it's like that. You just have to sit down, look at that blank page and write something, because once you've got something,
yeah.
you can then edit it, you can work on it. And a lot of writing is editing. No one writes a whole novel and it's brilliant. You start in January, you finish in December, and oh, look, it's brilliant. It's a lot of editing work goes on by yourself, maybe by your agent, by an editor at your publishers. So you've just got to put the words onto paper and get going. That said, obviously, you need an idea. And I do spend a lot of time plotting and planning my novels before I write.
Mm.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time researching or going to places, looking at magazines and newspapers for ideas. The problem pages of newspapers and all magazines are really good.
Yeah, of
If
course.
you write in domestic war or anything like that. So yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking, and for me, that's where the creativity comes in, planning the whole novel out. So I'll
Mm,
write a long outline, and then it's almost like you get to the point where you're just itching to get on and write it.
mm,
And so
yeah.
yeah, I think yeah, yeah, but ideas come from everywhere, don't they? And I do a lot of walking like you. I was saying this to my partner actually. The ideas, I don't set off on a walk and think, right, I'm going to think about this novel I'm writing and what could happen. I have to just let the ideas run around my head subconsciously,
Yeah.
So and then suddenly I might just see a woman, pass a woman and think, oh, she looks like the character, or hear a little bit of conversation, or
Mm.
see a place that I think would work. So yeah, I think it's a mixture of things, but I'm a big believer in just sitting down and doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, so you can draw, what I'm hearing you say there is you get out and about to develop ideas, just let ideas come to you based on what you see. So observing
Mhm.
things, noticing things, and then an idea
Yeah,
sort of sparks in your head that then when you then get back and sit down and put your bum on a seat, then you can start to develop that even further and just get the sort of the hours, if you like, writing. And
yes,
seeing that develop and having a bit of framework there once you've worked out the plot and the different characters and ask those characters those questions, and then start writing the story element of that. And you mentioned about editing yourself or having an agent editing, and as well, coming at it from a copywriting background as well, the editing part, the proofing part is probably the biggest part. The ideas you can run with because your imagination has no boundaries, has no barriers, but then the editing has a structure. And then that's kind of, well, does this bit, would that paragraph be better a little bit further up there because it flows better with that other paragraph? And then it's thinking a bit more about I suppose you've got the idea down as the author, then it's okay, well, how is the reader going to interpret this? And are they going to, because you mentioned before about asking the questions about the reader and what will they be thinking and how will they feel about a development or a character? That's all part of the editing, isn't it? And making that really crystal clear.
Yeah, and that's still part of the process. I mean,
Yeah.
once you've got that first draft down on paper, you then need to go back and look at it. You need to let it, as they say, let it rest for a while, and then go back afresh as if you're the reader.
No.
Because a lot of what we write is in our head. Well, all of it is in our heads, and we put it down on paper. Sometimes we leave things in our heads that need to be down on paper.
Yeah.
And you might go, oh, well, why is that character doing that? Because it's still in your head. You've not actually explained,
Yeah.
why that is. So
Yeah.
editing is a huge part, and the different parts of editing, like you said. So, you're editing for clarity, both at the ideas, character, plot level, and also, the structure of the sentences. If you're writing in first person, does there's this couple of ideas, every sentence start with I do this, I did that, I did the other. A sentence length difference. But if you get a publisher who buys your book, then they will assign an editor to you who will work with you on that. And you'll have lots of edits and then a final proofread. So and then you'll still find things. A good tip is to read your work out loud, because I've done a few library events where I'm reading from a novel, and then I can see, as you read, I can see the sentence coming up ahead, and I think, oh, I've used that word twice in this paragraph. Why have I done that? So that's a good tip, to read your work out loud.
Spotting that repetition and changing a word. Or I don't know if you're the same, but when I really started to think I want to make this a career and reading other books, and I think you kind of read it with a different head on, and the things that you like stand out, and you think, oh, that's a good idea, I like how they've done that. But also the perhaps errors. I use that. I'm not sure if that's the right word to use, because they're not necessarily errors, but they really jump out at you, like like you've just said, oh, use that word twice, or they've been in that situation before. It's almost a repetition of that situation, and still the odd typo and that. Not everything can be spotted, can it? And it's almost like it spoils the reader experience sometimes when you write yourself, because you're looking at it with that critical eye as well as the the enjoyment eye too.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm watching things, crime dramas on TV. I can often spot who will be the murderer, because I've looked so much about structure and story that it's quite annoying for people you live with. Say,
yeah.
no,
I try and leave it till the
it will
end
be
now. I
him.
think, I knew it was going to be them, but I don't try not to say anything at the time, just in case. Yeah, which is nice when you watch a film which shocks you still. I've watched a couple recently, which I've thought, sometimes I used to watch films, and if it ended with some ambiguity, I'd be like, oh, well, that was a waste of time. It was pointless watching that. But now, if I watch a film like that, I'm like, oh, why have they? Okay, so they've left it open to interpretation, and my mind then starts to think about what else could happen. I'm trying to think of two examples now. I've got the two films in my head, but I can't think of the name of it. Triangle of Sadness was one.
Okay, I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, very strange. Kind of split up into three different chapters. I wasn't sure about it when it first started playing it, and it does end with oh, okay. But it was well done. And then the other one was something that I watched the other day, which actually it got, can't think of the name of it. It's got Julia Roberts in and Kevin Bacon
Oh,
and another guy who's Ethan Hawke. So
is it Sleeping with the Enemy? No.
no, it's a recent film,
Oh. Mhm.
and it's basically kind of around the end of the world type scenario.
Okay.
But it plays a lot on psychological elements and what the
Hmm.
characters are going through. So yeah, and not very well written, and you're constantly thinking that person's got an ulterior motive, but then actually have they?
Hmm.
It's one of those things because you don't actually know how you would react, I suppose, in that sort of situation. So both those films are really good, and I kind of watched them with a different
Hmm.
eye now,
Yeah.
rather than just, oh, that was a waste of
Yeah.
time. So yeah, I find it all absolutely fascinating. Um, so what's next for you? You've got your crime series, and so are you looking
Yes.
for an agent for that? Are you going to self-publish that? Have you got what's sort of the what's for you with that?
No, I've got an agent. So when you get an agent, they take on all your work.
Mm,
So he's looking at that. He looked at it before Christmas, um, made some suggestions. So I'm changing that. While I've changed it, it's gone back to him. So I'm just waiting for feedback on that.
mm.
And then I've got a couple of other novels that are out on submission. So he sends them around to publishers. So yeah, I'm just waiting to hear back. And
Yeah. Oh,
it's a waiting game as well, publishing and
yeah.
being a writer.
I
You have to
think
have a lot of patience.
yeah, but if you're
Mm,
writing multiple things, then you're still busy with other projects while you're waiting, I
exactly.
suppose, rather than just
Yeah,
putting all of your cards in the one deck, so to
yeah.
speak. Am I right in thinking, and I think a book coach might have told me this, that if you submit to one publisher, you're not really supposed to submit to another publisher until you know their outcome. Is there a bit of an
Um,
etiquette with that, or
well, that's agents. So the
okay,
process is you have to, don't have to, but it's like a funnel. So you try to get a literary agent, and there are lots of literary agents. And then if they take you on, they then submit your work into publishers because publishers don't want, hundreds of thousands of people
yeah,
approaching them. So an agent is sort of a gatekeeper, um, and an agent takes commission on anything that they sell for you. So yeah, oh, and the etiquette is no, you can approach lots of different agents at
mm,
the same time because they do take a while to come back.
mm,
But you should note that in your covering letter that you've also sent it to other agents. You don't have to name them, but you should
yeah,
say, I've also sent this to other
yeah,
agents.
just to be
Um,
open and honest with them.
yeah, and
Mm,
look for an agent. Just don't do a scattergun approach, but look for someone who you think you could work with, some agents don't do crime. So I looked for agents that represented crime. So you have to do your research on
mm,
agents.
yeah,
And it is hard I mean, they get hundreds of submissions every week.
yeah, I can imagine.
Again, it's a little bit about luck as well, getting an agent and a publisher. You've got to
Mm,
hit that agent on the right day, that they're looking for something similar to what you've written, and that, they haven't already got a client who's written that. And same with the publisher, they might love your work, but they've already published a psychological thriller set in Geneva or whatever it is you're
yeah,
writing.
mm,
So,
yeah. I
yeah, it's a
suppose
little bit of luck.
a way to help you with that then is to write something that seems quite obscure at the time because nobody else potentially has written it.
Yeah, you could say that. Also, though, publishers, they say they're looking for something different, but are they really? Or they're just looking
Yeah.
for something that's similar to, let's say, Richard Osman. that they know will sell.
Yes, yeah, they are, and to be fair to them, it is a commercial operation, so they are going to be looking for what's going to make them money, aren't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a business.
It is a business, yeah. A business as the author, a business as the agent, a business as the publisher, and then of course the bookseller. And then there's another decision from the reader, isn't there? Do I want to read this?
Exactly.
So it's going to go through a lot of people. Yeah, it's fascinating. I can't wait to get started, actually. And I've got too many ideas, and I think part of my problem was which one do I focus on first? But you just have to make that decision and then just get on with it.
Yeah, you do. And I think focus on the idea that excites you the most.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be spending a lot of time with that idea.
Yeah.
When you get to that proofreading stage, you'll have read that book probably 100 times, if not more.
You've got to live and breathe it.
Yeah, you've got to be excited about the idea.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, it's been fabulous to talk to you, Mandy. Is there anything that you'd like to sort of share as a bit of a takeaway with anyone that's thinking about writing, where to start writing? We've talked about so much already, and I remember your presentation at the networking event where you kind of delved into some of your diary entries and gave a bit of an insight into your journey of being published, and you mentioned some of those knockbacks and things like that that we have to be prepared for as well. But is there anything that you would say, okay, well, if you're going to start, here's what I'd suggest, but be mindful of this, maybe?
I suppose my advice would be pick an idea you're interested in, love the process, and don't give up. Just keep writing, because there are going to be a lot of knockbacks along the way, a lot, more than you'll ever imagine.
Yeah.
So you've got to love that process. You've got to love the idea and just keep going. Like we said, enter competitions, network with other writers, do courses, keep learning about the craft of writing. A lot of people say, don't they? Oh, well, why should you go on a course as a writer? It's just in you and it flows out. But you wouldn't say that. I think the classic example is about a ballerina, or a ballet dancer. They don't just get up one day. Everyone has to learn the craft. So I don't think you can learn imagination. It's sort of, some people are imaginative, aren't they, by their own admission? Some people are, but you've got to learn the craft, work hard at it. Keep knocking on doors and just keep loving it, really.
Great advice, and lots of advice there. And I think what I'm hearing really is just start somewhere, keep going, and just trust in the process, and trust that you're going to get there, because you will at some point, if your head is in it for the long term, but your heart is in it, should I say, for the long term. Brilliant. It's been fabulous to chat to you. Thank you so much for spending some time with me and talking on the podcast. And best of luck with the series and all of the other projects that you're working on in the future.
Lovely. Thanks so much for inviting me to chat. It's been great.
It has. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's Writing with Purpose podcast. Having conversations with fellow writers or adventure enthusiasts brings two of my biggest loves in life together, writing and nature connection. I've been a copywriter and content creator for 23 years, but my passion is writing for well-being, and I'm on a mission to share the benefits that putting pen to paper has for personal wellness with as many people as possible. If you want to learn more about writing for your well-being and journaling techniques, please connect with me in my Facebook group, Journaling with Anna.